Welcome back to Charette Theory. In today's episode, we shift our gaze to the sun-warmed landscapes of desert modernism, interpreted through the soft, renewing lens of spring. The style, rooted in simplicity, raw materiality, and earth-toned restraint, offers a beautiful canvas for seasonal refresh. What happens when minimalism meets warmth? When cool materials touch the blush of new life? Today, we design a living room that harmonizes the quiet discipline of desert aesthetics with the soft optimism of spring. From color transitions to layered textures, sculptural pieces, and biophilic touches, this is your guide to creating a functional, serene, and soulful living space that breathes the dry elegance of the desert and the hopeful clarity of spring. We begin with the foundation, the palette. In desert modern interiors, color is never arbitrary. It is intentional, grounded, and evocative, a direct reflection of the landscape from which the style draws its soul. Imagine standing in the vast stillness of a desert plain, the air dry and golden, the sun casting long shadows across rugged rock. That feeling, that elemental clarity, is exactly what the desert modern palette aims to capture inside the home. At its core lies sandy beige, a soft and expansive neutral that feels as infinite as the dunes themselves. It wraps the room in quiet warmth, creating a backdrop that's light yet grounded, understated yet rich with atmosphere. Warm taupe follows, a deeper neutral that brings subtle gravity to the space. It mirrors the shaded recesses of desert cliffs, lending a comforting weight and a sense of natural layering. Where beige is openness, taupe is contour. Then comes the unmistakable presence of terracotta, earthy, bold, and sun-soaked. This burnt orange hue pulses with energy and character. It evokes clay pottery drying in the sun, the mineral-rich soil of desert canyons, and adobe architecture that has stood the test of centuries. It introduces warmth without chaos, anchoring the room with a sense of history and heat. Terracotta doesn't shout, it glows. Finally, there is soft clay, a color that bridges neutrality and warmth with its muted pinkish undertones. It conjures the gentle blush of the desert at dawn or the weathered texture of sun-faded brick. Soft clay brings a subtle romance to the palette, a reminder that even in the most arid landscapes, there is softness and story, erosion and grace. Combined, these tones do more than simply decorate a room, they cultivate an atmosphere. They invite stillness, evoke memory, and create a visual terrain that feels timeless and grounded. They don't compete for attention. Instead, they offer harmony, allowing materials, light, and form to emerge without distraction. This is the essence of desert modern color theory, not to overpower, but to connect. Not to dazzle, but to endure. It's in this quiet terrain, this soft, mineral-rich canvas, that we prepare to layer the seasonal freshness of spring. A transformation not of contrast, but of complement, where subtle botanical greens and muted floral hues will breathe life into an already serene foundation. the desert stillness is not a void. It holds space for change, for rhythm, for the gentle return of life. And so, into this earthen foundation, we begin to weave the quiet optimism of spring. Not with loud declarations, but with thoughtful infusions, colors that feel like a breath of new air carried softly across sun-worn stone. Spring in the desert isn't lush or showy. It's restrained, precise, and almost poetic. A single bloom breaking through cracked earth. A pale green leaf curling into light. These subtle moments are our guide. We don't erase the desert tones, we elevate them, introducing hues that feel like they've always belonged. Start with pale sage, a dusty, herbaceous green that echoes new growth without overpowering the room. It brings a whisper of nature indoors, the soft foliage of desert succulents or the gentle haze of a distant yucca grove. When paired with warm neutrals like taupe or clay, sage feels alive yet rooted. It's a color that invites calm, clarity, and breath. Then there is dusty rose, a shade as soft as it is soulful. Not quite pink, not quite beige, it's the color of early desert blossoms, modest but meaningful. It speaks of renewal in the most understated way, offering just enough contrast to highlight the surrounding earth tones while maintaining the harmony of the space. In cushions, ceramics, or artwork, dusty rose brings tenderness to the room without making it feel fragile. Next, consider muted coral, a springtime hue that carries a trace of the sun's warmth. It's a softened version of terracotta, more luminous, less saturated, and it adds a touch of liveliness to your palette without tipping into excess. Think of desert poppies in bloom, or the inner glow of a shell catching the afternoon light. Muted coral is where color meets restraint, vibrancy meets discipline. And finally, soft sky blue, the most ethereal of spring tones. It brings the desert sky indoors. The kind you see just after sunrise or moments before dusk, pale and expansive and full of possibility. This hue is best used sparingly, a ceramic bowl on a wood shelf, a watercolor print in a simple frame, a throw gently draped over a linen chair. It should feel like light itself has settled into the room. Together, these spring infusions do not compete with the desert palette, they interact with it. They lift it. They soften its edges and illuminate its depths. They remind us that even the most minimal, grounded spaces can evolve, can breathe, can bloom. And that transformation, when approached with intention, doesn't require a full overhaul, just the right touch in the right place. In this way, spring doesn't overwhelm desert modernism, it harmonizes with it. A quiet duet between earth and air, age and renewal, structure and softness. A reminder that minimalism is not cold or static, it's alive, evolving with the seasons, ready to receive what's next. Desert Modern thrives on honesty, not just in its lines or layout, but in the very essence of its materials. This is a style that refuses ornament for ornament's sake. It speaks in the quiet language of raw texture, of restraint, of reverence for what is real. There is no gloss to distract, no embellishment to conceal. Surfaces are left bare not because they are unfinished, but because they are enough. They tell their own stories, of earth, of time, of hand and process. Matte finishes dominate here, not polished or synthetic, but soft, tactile, and true. A matte clay vase, a chalky painted wall, a lightly sanded wood beam, each invites touch and resists the artificial shine of mass production. These finishes absorb light rather than reflect it, creating a soft diffusion that enhances the tranquil atmosphere of the room. There's a kind of humility in this approach, a belief that beauty lies in restraint. Materials are celebrated in their natural form. You see the grain in the wood, the uneven firing marks in ceramic, the subtle weave of linen. Nothing is covered up or masked. Even imperfections are embraced, because in this aesthetic, a knot in the wood or a ripple in the glaze isn't a flaw. It's a fingerprint, proof of life and process. It's a quiet defiance against the sterile and the mass-produced. The result is not just visual calmness, but a deeper sense of integrity. There is clarity in a space where each object is chosen with purpose, where each surface breathes and holds its own weight. You enter the room and feel it, an atmosphere that is pared down yet rich, still yet expressive. This is material truth. A kind of honesty that doesn't need to speak loudly to be felt deeply. At the heart of desert modern interiors is the reverence for materiality, and few materials speak more quietly and powerfully than wood. But not just any wood. Here, we turn to light oak and reclaimed timber, each offering a distinct story, a unique emotional texture that brings warmth, history, and grounding to a space defined by restraint. Light oak is the epitome of subtle elegance. Its tone is soft, almost silvery in certain light, and its grain is quiet yet expressive, like lines drawn in sand. It doesn't overpower the room or demand attention, but it supports it with strength and poise. In the form of a coffee table, sideboard, or open shelving unit, light oak offers visual clarity. It feels connected to the desert floor, sun-bleached, tactile, elemental. The pale warmth of the wood reflects natural light softly, creating a sense of airiness that is essential in a minimalist space. It brightens without shouting, anchors without overwhelming. Then there's reclaimed wood. A material that carries time within its grain. Sourced from old barns, warehouses, or long dismantled structures, this wood arrives already weathered, already wise. Its texture is rougher, its tones deeper, and its presence unmistakably soulful. A reclaimed wood bench or table in a desert modern interior feels like a memory planted in the present. The knots, nail holes, and tonal variations are not imperfections, they're marks of survival, signs of a previous life. They lend the room depth and gravity, balancing the lighter, cleaner elements with a touch of rustic authenticity. Choosing reclaimed wood is also an act of intention. It's a gesture toward sustainability, a refusal to erase the past for the sake of something shiny and new. It allows us to design with conscience, aligning the aesthetics of minimalism with the ethics of reuse. Whether you lean toward the smooth serenity of light oak or the layered storytelling of reclaimed wood, or a dialogue between both, the key is to let the material breathe. Avoid heavy stains or finishes that mask the wood's natural character. Let the patina show. Let the history live on the surface. In a spring-infused desert modern space, these wood tones become more than furniture. They become landscape, structure, memory, a grounding element within a room that is otherwise light, fluid, and open. They remind us that minimalism is not about absence, it's about presence, distilled to its purest form. In a desert modern living room touched by spring, texture becomes the language of expression. With a palette so grounded and restrained, and furniture so sculptural yet spare, it is the tactile surfaces, the fibers, the weaves, the natural irregularities, that breathe warmth into the minimalism. And few elements speak this language more fluently than woven baskets and sisal rugs. Let's begin with woven baskets, objects that exist somewhere between utility and sculpture. They are humble in form, made from seagrass, jute, or rattan, often hand-woven with subtle variations that reflect the artisan's rhythm and hand. But in the desert modern context, they are elevated. Tucked beside a low sofa or placed beneath an open bench, they offer soft storage without visual noise. A place for folded linen throws, rolled magazines, or a gathering of eucalyptus stems. Their presence adds curve to the clean lines of the room, bringing softness, pattern, and heritage into a space that could otherwise feel too linear or still. Beyond function, a woven basket is a symbol. It ties the room to the human hand, to tradition, to cultures that thrive in arid landscapes. There's something deeply appropriate about that in a desert-inspired home, to honor what is handmade, natural, and lasting. Then, underfoot, we introduce the grounding element, the sisal rug. Textured, fibrous, and raw, a sisal rug immediately defines space without overwhelming it. Its coarse weave contrasts beautifully with smooth floors and minimalist furnishings, adding another layer of warmth and subtle complexity. The color, usually sand, straw, or bone, is a perfect continuation of the desert palette. It reflects light softly and invites barefoot contact, reinforcing the tactile serenity of the room. And in spring, when the light shifts and windows open, this material comes alive. You hear its gentle crunch, you feel its dry softness, and you see how it anchors the airiness around it. For an even more layered approach, you might place a lighter flatweave rug over the sisal, a kilim in pale coral, sage, or sky blue. This is not maximalism, but rather minimalist depth, texture within texture, a whisper of pattern upon silence. Together, woven baskets and sisal rugs offer more than surface detail. They create connection to the earth, to craft, to the feeling of touch. They are quiet design moves that reward attention. In a springtime desert modern interior, they help bridge the gap between austerity and comfort, function and feeling, nature and nurture. In a space shaped by stillness and sun, not every object must be perfect. In fact, imperfection becomes a virtue, a sign of life, of process, of human touch. And nowhere is this more gracefully expressed than in clay or ceramic vases with natural irregularities. In the context of desert modern design, especially when kissed by the gentle renewal of spring, these vessels are more than just decor. They are quiet sculptures, earthbound poems, anchors of authenticity in a world too often polished. Clay, in its rawest form, is matter pulled directly from the ground. It is shaped by hands, spun on wheels, fired in kilns. The marks it bears, whether a wavering edge, a glaze that pools unevenly, or the faint ghost of a fingerprint, are not mistakes. They are memories. They are the history of creation etched into form. In desert modern interiors, where surfaces are restrained and geometry is clear, these natural imperfections create a beautiful tension. A balance between the architectural and the organic. Between control and surrender. Placed on a reclaimed wood shelf or centered atop a stone coffee table, a hand-thrown vase does not shout. It simply exists, softly, truthfully. The matte finish of natural clay contrasts gently with smoother elements in the room. A vase with an asymmetric neck or an undulating base becomes a point of interest without disrupting the minimalist rhythm. And when filled with a single branch, a dried flower, or left empty entirely, it continues to speak of restraint and reverence. Color, too, matters. Choose tones that align with the desert earth palette: chalky white, sandstone beige, sun-baked terracotta, dusty rose, or soft olive green. Let the glazes be matte or semi-matte, not reflective. Let their surfaces absorb light rather than bounce it. That softness, the refusal to shine, becomes part of the room's tranquility. These pieces can be collected slowly, intentionally. They don't need to match. In fact, a mix of forms and sizes enhances the sense of natural evolution. A taller vase beside a squat vessel, a narrow bottleneck beside a wide-mouthed bowl, together, they create a visual composition that feels instinctive and unforced. What they ultimately bring to the desert modern spring living room is soul. In a space where furniture is clean-lined and the color palette is hushed, clay and ceramic forms add warmth and narrative. They remind us that minimalism doesn't mean lifelessness. That austerity can coexist with emotion. That the most powerful design statements are often made not with shine or scale, but with texture, shape, and imperfection. As winter begins to loosen its grip and the days grow longer, your home should respond, not with drastic changes, but with quiet transitions. And one of the most poetic places to begin is with textiles. In a space guided by the principles of desert modernism, where every material is chosen with care and every object has meaning, textiles are more than comfort, they are mood, season, and movement. They signal change in the softest of ways. As the cold months retreat, there is no longer a need for the weight of wool throws, the dense drape of velvet cushions, or the tactile drama of heavy fabrics. These materials, while rich and grounding in winter, begin to feel too present, too insistent when the air shifts and the light becomes more generous. Spring in the desert doesn't arrive in bursts of color or lush foliage, it comes as a pause, a clearing, a breath. And your textiles should echo that rhythm. Begin by folding away the thick knits and jewel-toned velvets. In their place, introduce fabrics that breathe, linens that crumple with elegance, cottons that drift gently in the breeze, gauzy textures that invite your hand. These are not just lighter in weight, they are lighter in feeling. They allow light to pass through them, to dance on surfaces, to create movement where winter once held stillness. A throw made of washed linen draped casually over a sofa doesn't just provide comfort, it softens the lines of the furniture and adds a layer of lived-in warmth. A pair of cotton pillows in warm neutrals or faded pastels can transform the tone of a room without ever demanding attention. In desert modern design, this is the goal, for every change to feel like it belongs, like it has always been there, simply waiting for its season. Even within the minimalist framework, textiles offer an opportunity to play with subtle complexity. Think textures more than patterns, faint herringbones, soft weaves, or bare leather embroidery. Let the fabric speak quietly, its presence felt more through touch than sight. And in every piece, consider not just the look, but the feeling, how it folds, how it ages, how it responds to light. In the spring desert, there is no need for visual noise. The beauty is in the restraint, the air, the soft invitation to slow down. Let your textiles be an extension of that. Let them shift with the season, not just as decoration, but as a lived experience. Because when minimalism meets nature, every fabric becomes part of a larger story. One of renewal, of openness, and of quiet joy. If walls define the structure of a room, then drapes define its atmosphere. They are not merely functional barriers against light or eyes, they are veils through which the room breathes. In desert modern interiors touched by the spirit of spring, drapery becomes a design gesture of softness, air, and invitation. It's where architecture meets poetry. Gone are the heavy fabrics of colder months, the velvet panels, the blackout linings, the thick woven blends meant to seal out the cold. As spring unfolds, these give way to something lighter, more ethereal. Enter lightweight linen and gauzy cotton, two materials that not only frame your windows, but transform the light itself. Linen, in its washed and unpolished state, is the textile embodiment of desert modern restraint. It hangs with a natural grace, not overly tailored, not stiff or overly structured. There's beauty in how it moves, with a breeze, with a passing body, with the slow rhythm of a house waking up to spring. The irregular texture of linen, with a slight slub in the weave, the occasional crinkle, adds an organic quality that echoes the imperfections found in desert stone and clay. Its color, often somewhere between sand and cloud, complements the sun-washed tones of the interior without pulling focus. Cotton, especially in open weaves, offers a similar softness but with a slightly more luminous effect. It lets in the light in ways that feel gentle, diffused, and alive. When sunlight passes through sheer cotton panels in the early afternoon, it doesn't just brighten the room, it animates it. Shadows soften, edges blur, and suddenly the space feels less like a static arrangement of furniture and more like a living, breathing environment. Choose colors that echo the palette around them, off-white, oat, ivory, or a muted pale sage for a seasonal gesture. Let them brush the floor instead of hovering awkwardly above it. Let them gather slightly, even puddle. These small details shift the space from structured to sensual, from sterile to serene. But it's not just about the fabric. It's about what the fabric allows. These light drapes let in natural light, the most essential ingredient of spring design. They encourage openness. They dissolve the boundary between interior and exterior, between morning and noon, between object and air. They allow the desert to speak, through shadow, through warmth, through wind. In this way, your choice of drapes becomes more than a practical solution, it becomes a statement of seasonal intent. A subtle but transformative shift that aligns your home with the turning of time. And in a desert modern room, where everything is chosen with care and nothing is arbitrary, this gesture toward lightness is deeply felt. In a desert modern living room softened by spring, it is often the smallest gestures that carry the most meaning. And among these, few are more quietly transformative than the thoughtful placement of throw pillows. These are not just decorative flourishes, they are texture, tone, and touch woven into everyday comfort. They are where the eye lands and the body rests. And in a minimalist space, where every element must earn its place, pillows become both invitation and expression. Begin with textured neutrals, the subtle foundation of any spring-inspired desert palette. Think soft ivory with a woven linen face, or warm taupe with a slight buccal surface. The textures matter, because in the absence of loud patterns or bold color, it is the feel of the fabric, both visual and tactile, that draws the senses. A chunky weave, a cross-dyed cotton, or a hand-spun textile adds layers to the room without introducing clutter. These pillows bring depth to clean-lined furniture and soften the graphic quality of modern forms. They act like the worn edge of a desert stone, rugged, natural, and softened by time. But spring calls for subtle renewal, and so we introduce botanical prints, not as bright flourishes, but as whispers of life. In a desert-inspired space, florals are never overgrown or overly sweet. Instead, they appear in delicate line drawings, faded ink impressions, or abstracted motifs of leaves and stems. Choose prints in dusty sage, soft clay, muted coral, or pale blue, tones that feel sun-bleached and timeless. These prints nod to nature without disrupting the room's calm. They remind us that the desert, too, blooms, quietly, briefly, beautifully. The arrangement of pillows should feel instinctive rather than styled. 2 or 3 thoughtfully selected pieces on a linen sofa are enough. Vary the sizes. A larger square in a coarse neutral, a smaller rectangular pillow in a printed cotton, perhaps a hand-stitched cover with a bare leather floral pattern. Let the combination reflect the balance of the entire space, minimal yet warm, restrained yet welcoming. These pillows do more than soften a seat. They offer comfort without excess. They allow the body to sink into the stillness of the room, to find rest among clean lines and sunlit silence. They are the tactile layer that turns a space from beautiful to livable, from style to soulful. In a desert modern home shaped by function and grounded in natural tones, throw pillows become punctuation marks, brief, gentle notes of softness in a sentence written in stone and sky. They tell you that spring has arrived, not loudly, but lovingly. That comfort need not be plush to be profound. That beauty lives in the smallest, quietest forms. every room lies a quiet foundation, not just of flooring, but of feeling. In a desert modern space shaped by minimalism and sunlight, the floor becomes a canvas for texture, for grounding, for warmth. And one of the most understated yet deeply effective ways to articulate that foundation is through the layering of rugs, specifically, a flatweave over a jute base. This pairing is not about excess, but about depth without clutter, richness without noise. Start with jute. Coarse, natural, and earthy, jute is the desert underfoot. It carries the dry texture of parched terrain, of woven grass and raw fiber. In its sandy tones, beige, straw, honey, it speaks the same language as adobe walls and sun-baked clay. A large jute rug, laid across the floor like a quiet field, creates structure and texture. It anchors the room in a way that feels effortless and organic, allowing every piece of furniture to rest upon it with intention. Its weave is visible, honest, and irregular, reminding us that nature doesn't strive for perfection, only presence. Then, over this base, place a flatweave rug, something lighter, finer, and more detailed. A kilim in soft desert tones, a cotton durry with pale geometric lines, or a hand-loomed textile with hints of sage, clay, or washed indigo. This top layer becomes the accent, the gentle rise in the terrain. It offers contrast without chaos, rhythm without repetition. The layering creates visual hierarchy and sensory variation. Your eye moves across the surface, noticing the difference in texture, the interplay of color, the subtle elevation. It's minimalism with nuance. Silence with inflection. This combination also reflects the dual nature of desert modern in spring, foundation and freshness, structure and softness. The jute rug grounds the space with its rawness, the flatweave brings in a whisper of the new season, a lightness, color, pattern. Together, they tell a story of layered time. What has always been, and what is beginning again. Functionally, this approach also adds comfort without heaviness. Jute can be rough on its own, but the overlay of a softer weave adds warmth underfoot. It protects, insulates, and invites. And visually, the layering gives the room a lived-in elegance. Nothing feels over-designed. Nothing feels accidental. In a desert modern room that resists the ornate and embraces the elemental, this simple act, one rug laid atop another, becomes a gesture of quiet sophistication. A nod to the beauty of material contrast. A reminder that minimalism is not about doing less, it's about doing only what matters, with honesty, harmony, and care. In the stillness of the desert, greenery is not abundant, but when it appears, it commands attention. It is sculptural, resilient, unapologetically itself. In desert modern interiors, especially as spring begins to unfold, we turn to plants not as lush decoration, but as living sculpture, carefully placed, deeply considered, and full of symbolic weight. They bring a quiet vitality into minimalist spaces, reminding us that even in the most pared-down environments, life persists. And among the most iconic of these forms is Aloe Vera. This plant is the embodiment of desert resilience. Its shape is unmistakable, long, fleshy leaves that reach upward and outward in structured symmetry, edged with soft serrations, like a natural piece of brutalist design. The tone is a muted, dusty green, perfectly aligned with the desert palette, never too vibrant, always grounded. When placed in a terracotta or rough ceramic pot, Aloe Vera becomes more than a plant. It becomes a sculptural focal point, echoing the language of raw materials and functional form. But aloe is more than just aesthetic. It carries with it a quiet usefulness, its leaves filled with a soothing gel, known for centuries for its healing properties. In that way, it aligns beautifully with desert modernism's core philosophy: beauty should be tied to function, and design should serve both form and purpose. To have aloe in the home is to live with a piece of the desert's wisdom, both enduring and nurturing, architectural and alive. Position aloe thoughtfully, perhaps beside a reading chair where light filters softly through linen drapes, or on a low console where its silhouette can be admired in profile. It doesn't need floral companions or glossy leaves to make its statement. Its strength is in its form, its stillness, its quiet power. And in spring, as sunlight lingers longer and the interior opens up to air and movement, aloe brings a calm and grounded energy to the space. It bridges the interior with the landscape beyond, especially in desert climates where aloe might also thrive just beyond the window. Inside, it speaks of continuity and connection. It says, this is a place that honors life, but only in its truest, most distilled form. Aloe Vera is the beginning of a seasonal green story told with restraint, and it sets the tone for the statement greenery that follows, plants chosen not for excess, but for presence. If aloe vera is the sculptural anchor of desert greenery, then the snake plant is its minimalist counterpart, sleek, upright, and effortlessly architectural. Known also as Sansevieria or mother-in-law's tongue, this plant has long been admired not just for its resilience, but for its striking simplicity. It stands like a natural monument, tall, slender blades of foliage that rise vertically from the soil in confident stillness. In a desert modern space, where restraint and function guide every choice, the snake plant fits like a line drawn by hand, a punctuation mark in a room of soft geometry. Its leaves are sharply defined, sometimes edged in gold, sometimes marbled with dark greens and silvers. But always, the form is clean, pure, linear. There is no droop, no sprawling, no excess. Each leaf grows with direction, echoing the Bauhaus sensibility of form following function, no fluff, only purpose. And yet, despite its austerity, the snake plant brings an unmistakable energy to a room. Grounded, structured, and alive. Unlike lush tropical plants that demand constant care, the snake plant thrives in low light, requires little water, and prefers to be left alone, qualities that align seamlessly with the ethos of desert modern design. It is a plant that invites presence without performance. It does not beg for attention, yet always rewards it. Position it as a vertical accent in a reading nook or an architectural corner. Place it in a matte black planter, a handmade terracotta pot, or a raw ceramic cylinder to further emphasize its clean silhouette. It looks especially powerful against pale walls or beside natural materials, light oak, woven jute, brushed concrete. Think of it as a living line drawing within the space, connecting floor to ceiling with subtle intention. And in the context of spring, the snake plant offers something unique: stillness within growth. Where other plants burst forward with blossoms and soft leaves, the snake plant remains calm and confident. It is spring's quiet observer. A reminder that growth can be vertical, focused, meditative. It tells us that even in the season of renewal, not all beauty is tender, some of it is structured, stoic, and strong. In this way, the snake plant becomes more than just greenery. It becomes a sculptural extension of the room's architecture, a natural element that reflects the home's values: minimalism, honesty, and longevity. If the snake plant stands as a pillar of strength and order, then the desert rose, with its unexpected beauty and sculptural presence, offers a poetic counterpoint. Known botanically as Adenium obesum, the desert rose is an embodiment of contrast, both soft and strong, delicate and defiant. In the heart of a desert modern living room, where minimalism meets natural texture, this plant feels like a carefully placed artwork, a bloom born from stone. At first glance, it doesn't demand attention. Its bulbous base, thick and gnarled like a miniature tree trunk, sits heavy and grounded, almost prehistoric in form. It's a trunk that has weathered harshness and stored water like wisdom. From this dense, architectural core, long tapered leaves emerge, extending with elegance and ease. And then, just when the structure feels most stoic, comes the bloom. In spring, the desert rose begins to flower, often in shades of coral, deep rose, or blush pink. Muted yet vivid, as if the color had faded slightly under the desert sun. These blossoms are not frilly or overabundant, they are spare and considered, like brushstrokes on canvas. Their presence feels earned. In a space of quiet tones and clean lines, a single bloom from a desert rose can feel like a whisper of emotion, subtle but unforgettable. This plant perfectly captures the philosophy at the heart of desert modern spring design, that beauty can emerge from harsh conditions, and that softness is most powerful when it's rooted in strength. It's not about abundance, it's about meaning. The desert rose tells us that flowering isn't always dramatic. Sometimes, it's a slow reveal. A still moment. A single bloom in a sea of restraint. To integrate the desert rose into your living space, consider placing it in a low, wide ceramic planter, one with a matte finish or hand-thrown texture. Let it breathe. Give it room. Set it on a console of reclaimed wood or a stone ledge, where light can move across its sculptural base. It thrives in sunlight, so let it sit near a window, basking in the same golden tones that define your interior. In spring, when your home opens up to air and light, the desert rose becomes more than a plant. It becomes a symbol of balance, between bloom and bark, between vitality and restraint, between the decorative and the deeply structural. It holds stillness and surprise in the same breath. not all signs of spring must be freshly bloomed. In the language of desert modern interiors, where every element is chosen with intention and silence is as meaningful as sound, the presence of dried florals speaks volumes. They offer a different kind of life, a still life, graceful and enduring. Where fresh flowers may fade quickly or overwhelm with sweetness, dry botanicals like Pampas grass and eucalyptus bring structure, softness, and sculpture, without urgency, without need. Their beauty lies not in bright petals or vivid greens, but in their subtlety. Pampas grass, with its tall, feathered plumes, rises like a gentle breeze frozen in time. Its tone, creamy beige, warm taupe, sunlit ivory, perfectly mirrors the desert palette. It's a gesture of movement in a room full of calm, a vertical softness that sways slightly when the windows are open, catching the afternoon light like dust in the air. Pampas doesn't shout spring, it whispers it. And that's precisely why it belongs here. Then there's eucalyptus, its silver green leaves delicate and architectural, trailing with quiet elegance. Dried eucalyptus brings not only texture, but scent, a faint, clean aroma that lingers in the background, almost imperceptible, like memory. The branches can be upright or cascading, placed loosely in a hand-thrown vase, left natural and untrimmed. Their presence feels untouched by trend or time. Together, these dry botanicals serve multiple roles in the desert modern home. A single tall stem in a narrow-necked vessel becomes a minimalist sculpture. A loose bundle placed in a woven basket introduces both volume and air. And a cluster of mixed dried flora, perhaps with muted thistle, dry palm, or bunny-tail grass, adds dimension without disrupting the room's calm restraint. They are also incredibly low maintenance, reinforcing the ethos of desert modernism, that beauty should be sustainable, enduring, and quiet. No watering. No wilting. Just form, preserved. In a spring context, this is powerful. It suggests that not all renewal needs to be fresh. Some of it can be found in what remains, what has dried, aged, and become timeless. Dried florals also blur the line between nature and decor. They are neither fully alive nor entirely inert. They exist in a space between, just like spring in the desert itself, where the landscape is never lush, but never lifeless. They add breath to minimalism, softness to structure, and gesture to stillness. In a desert modern room where stone, wood, and linen dominate, a single vase of dried pampas or eucalyptus becomes the emotional center, elegant, ephemeral, and enduring all at once. Spring in the desert is not a spectacle, it's a whisper. A shift in the air. A subtle warming of stone. A longer stretch of light across a quiet floor. And in your living room, that shift doesn't need to announce itself loudly. It simply needs to be felt. In the softness of a linen curtain catching a breeze. In the earthy scent of eucalyptus rising from a ceramic bowl. In the way sunlight moves slowly across a woven rug in the late afternoon. Desert modernism, at its core, is not about style, it's about intention. It asks, what belongs here? What feels essential? What speaks quietly, but clearly? It strips away what's unnecessary, not to create emptiness, but to create space, space for texture, for memory, for reflection, for rest. Spring invites us to do the same. To edit. To soften. To warm. to live lighter but no less meaningfully. You've brought in pale desert tones, sandy beige, warm taupe, terracotta, soft clay, and lifted them with sage, blush, and pale sky. You've let in the light, filtered through sheer drapes and bouncing off natural surfaces. You've chosen furniture that is honest in form and generous in function. You've cleared clutter not to erase, but to make space for the things that matter: books, vessels, plants, stories. You've layered with softness. You've decorated with restraint. And you've added depth with vintage and handmade pieces that carry history in their grain, in their curves, in their calm. This is not just a living room. It's a seasonal landscape, built not from flowers or frills, but from raw beauty, balance, and breath. So let spring arrive quietly. Let it unfold across your floor, rise into your walls, and settle gently into your everyday moments. Let it be felt in the air, in the textures, in the stillness. Let it live with you. And as the season matures, slowly, subtly, you may find that your space doesn't need to change dramatically. It only needs to stay open, to stay clear, to stay intentional. Because in the desert, as in design, the most profound transformations are not loud. They are quiet. They are rooted. And they are beautiful.